as I mentioned earlier, I'm a former surface warfare officer. So for you non-Navy types, that means I'm a ship driver. And anybody who knows surface warfare knows one thing. As a group, we are the most sleep-deprived people since the Air Force invented sleep, right? I mean, I have personally spent several years at sea, and shockingly less than some on this call, I understand. But I can't recall a single 24-hour period at sea where I got more than 5 or 6 hours of sleep, and rarely more than 3 or 4 without interruption. So I left active duty 20 years ago. I'm still catching up. Now, this week's speaker is John Cordle. He's also a surface warfare officer, and on top of that, he's a nuclear SWO with a couple of at-sea command tours under his belt. Now, that's a combination that drives your sleep budget down into negative numbers. Years ago, John made an observation that everybody already kind of knew. Sleep deprivation has an effect on judgment and reaction time that is similar to intoxication. But then John took it a step further, and he asked a few questions that apparently nobody in a position of leadership had bothered to ask. Why have we created a system that has us driving around billion-dollar warships while we are effectively 3 sheets to the wind? Good question, right? What does that cost us in terms of lives and material? Another good question. And finally, what the hell can we do about it? So it turns out all of those questions have answers, and I'm going to let John pick up the story from here. So John, welcome to Ringknocker. Welcome back into the speaker's chair, sir. Very happy to have you, and we're all very, very interested in what you have to say, and we all promise to stay awake.
So I want to start with a sea story per Jason's direction. The year is 2002. USS Oscar Austin is just north of the Copenhagen Bridge on a Form 1 at about going about 180 southerly course at about 15 knots with 4 destroyers behind it. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. For you aviators of Form 1, it looks something like this at about that speed. Okay, that's my slow sea story. So the captain's on the bridge. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. He's been up for about 36 hours, and he's kind of tired. And he's going into what's called micro sleeps, right? But what wakes him up is a ruckus on the bridge. And so it went something like this. Captain wakes up, kind of looks around. It's dark, disoriented, because he's almost been asleep on his feet. And he goes, hey, off the deck, where are we? Well, sir, we haven't had a fix in 6 minutes. Okay, navigator, where's shoal water? Sir, it's about 2,000 yards away, but I can't tell you what direction. At that point, the captain says, this is the captain. I have the con. All engines stop, rudder amidships. The XO hollers out, hey, captain, we have 4 ships behind us. You realize that, right? Grab the bridge to bridge, all stations, all ships in formation Gulf. This is Oscar Austin. I have lost situation awareness. I've stopped my engines. Please remain clear. This all happened in the space of about 30 seconds. Got a fix, got our bearings, got back into safe water, and headed back out. So everything's fine, right? Well, the next day, it wasn't fine when my Commodore gave me a pretty large butt chewing for basically putting the ship in danger, putting my crew in danger, and really endangering the whole mission. So I failed that night. I failed myself, and I failed my crew. And so that stuck with me. But it took me until my next command tour to really figure out a way to address it. And so that's what I wanted to talk about, is how we sort of embarked on this journey that I kind of call my circadian journey. I guess my first question is, what is that thing behind you? I've been wondering that for like 3 sessions. That's
a giant piece of teak root. Like they dug the root of a teak tree out of the ground, hosed it off, kind of polished it up, and there it is. It's one of those things that the Balinese excel at. But it weighs about 400 pounds.
Okay. Yeah, that's been keeping me awake for the last 3 weeks. So now all right. Well, right. So thanks for the intro. I guess if I had to sum it up, 30-year nuke, SWO, and pretty much always tired. And so that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. What's the problem? What can be done about it? And maybe hopefully a few things that will resonate with this group. You hear me okay, Jason?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So first of all, the views that I'm talking about are my own. They don't reflect the U.S. government for whom I work. But I wanted to just make that clear. But I have had experience here and had some great co-workers and friends that have contributed to this. And so that's what I want to talk about tonight. The first thing I want to do is state the problem. And I gave a couple of handouts. I don't know if everyone has access to them. I'll hold it up in a second. But, as you noted, people don't sleep enough in the military. So I got to participate in a RAND study back in 2015. And they came up with some numbers, and they're pretty shocking when you look at it. Military sleep deprivation is the title. And when you look at military populations, the vast majority, probably 60%, are less than 6 hours of sleep per night. 5 was the highest number, as a matter of fact. Now that I'm retired, the civilian population, I'm in that group, and it's more like 7 to 8, which is kind of normal. And so that's, I'll hold this up. That's this graph right here. Right. So here is us, the military population. And here's me now with going to bed at 10 o'clock and 2 dogs that wake me up at 6 a.m. So that's 8 hours. So that's the problem. Why is that a problem? Well, the next little slide that I gave you is from the postgraduate school, Dr. Anita Shattuck and her group, with some short-term, mid-term, and long-term effects of sleep deprivation. Short-term, you're looking at things like loss of memory, poor motor skills, poor judgment. You know, not the kind of stuff you want to have in your officer of the deck who's up in the middle of the night on watch. Midterm effects, things like after you go through a deployment, standing a non-circadian watch rotation, which we'll talk about. Now you're looking at memory loss, decreased training, decreased retention, poor memory, and just overall detriment to your performance, mission degradation. Again, not the kind of stuff you want in your commanding officer, your flag officers, and your leaders. And then for this group, probably just as important are the long-term effects, where you get into your health, your well-being, and even studies that link it to things like diabetes, obesity, and even cancer. So those are some of the things. You know, that's the part of the problem. And what I've started to tell folks is, you know, this isn't something that just happens to us. You know, this is something that we actively participate almost in inflicting this upon our sailors. And so we can make a difference here. And that's kind of what I want to talk about tonight.
John, I've got a question for you. Just to cement my own understanding here. So let's say that I start with a typical sort of 3-watch rotation, right?
Right.
So how do I transform that into a circadian watch bill? What's operationally, what's the difference?
Okay, great question. So by definition, circadian, as you probably learned in high school, is your body's 24-hour clock. It's kind of a combination of 3 things. It's already kind of built in. It's triggered by light, to some extent noise, and some chemicals in your body, melatonin or some other ones. And so they sort of interact to create this cycle of wakefulness and sleepfulness that you can look up. And, this book tells a pretty good story of that. But the 24-hour clock is pretty well built into us humans, and it always has been. So if you align your watch rotation to a 24 hours, and the 3 pieces of this puzzle is, 1, you have to stand the same watch every day. So it can be 3 on, 9 off, 3 on, 9 off. That's 24. It could be 4 on, 8 off, which a lot of the commercial mariners do. And then you have another watch in the evening and one in the morning. Or it could even be 6 and 6, although that's not a good one. But it's still circadian. And so I stood most of my watches in what's called 5 and dimes, which is 5 on, 10 off. You never sleep the same time at night. You may be up for 24 hours and then sleep for 10, but then you have a sleep deficit because your body doesn't. It's literally like flying back and forth across the United States every day, right? When you stand the normal Navy watch that we were doing for decades. So that's what you're doing to your body. So that's circadian. And just one last thing is, it's not just the watch bill, right? You have to change the daily routine, and you have to sort of honor or protect a sleep period. So that's why if I had the mid to 3, I slept in until 10 a.m., right? I still got as much work done. All you're doing is rearranging the workday, but that is such to get your head around that. Very tough. And
you're not, if I understand correctly, that a key difference here is that you're not rotating the watch.
Correct. Right. Some ships have done a whole deployment with that exact, like every morning I have the 3 to 7 or the mid to 3 and noon to 3. Some ships rotate about every 2 to 3 weeks is kind of what the science will tell you is about the sweet spot. One of the things you'll find is if I'm on one watch rotation, it's like everything else. Everybody else's looks better than mine, right? I'm the guy who's getting screwed. And then we shift and then, hey, wait a minute, I'm still the guy getting, so that sort of keeps it even across the board. And there are advantages. There is studies that say even though you're on the same schedule, if you stay on nights, it's still detrimental. So, but the key is to build the watch bill and then build a schedule around the watch bill and not be sort of married to the standard Navy workday.
Gotcha. So then what happens, I guess two related questions. Number one, does it apply to the wardroom as well?
Yes, it applied. Basically, what we did is we took the watch bill, and that was the primary thing. So you're on a warship underway. That's a great observation. So one of my friends is a Greek officer, and he rides Navy ships as part of his postgraduate work. And he goes, "You guys crack me up. When I'm on the bridge of my ship in Greece, we're focused on driving the ship, right? That's what we do. If I go on to an American ship, there's 20 people on the bridge, and they're doing everything but focused on driving the ship. And then when they get off watch, they go do general military training, and they do all this admin, and you know, they're out to sea, but their focus is not, you know, the operational focus. And so this watch bill really zooms the ship in on what are we out here to do? We're out here to stand a good watch. Because when somebody shoots at you, or you're in a narrow channel, you don't have time, and your reaction time matters. So that's kind of the mindset. And yeah, it applies to everybody.
Yeah, I always used to tell people that the big difference between going to sea in the Navy and going out to the field in the Marine Corps is that in the Marine Corps, you can't fit your desk in your backpack.
Yeah, they still want you to do paperwork in the field, I'm sure, though.
Less than you might imagine. Although I was a Lance Corporal, so it probably, you know, there's probably paperwork I didn't have to do. So then, what do you do about sort of unique daily evolution, like quarters and that kind of thing, right? Where, you know, division officers are expected to show up at quarters, but if this really applies to the wardroom, then, you know, what is it? You send your chief every day? How's that work?
So let's try this. Name an organization other than the Navy or the military where every day, every worker shows up and gets told what to do that day. You know, they don't. People know what they're supposed to do, and they're supposed to do it. And if they don't, you hold them accountable. So what we did was we actually held, I think, an officer's call right before lunch, like at 11. Everybody got together. We put out the plan of the day. And then after lunch, I think there was sort of a period of enlisted training and Oklahoma. We didn't really do a lot of, you know, standing in line or standing in formation, morning quarters. We just sort of said, hey, look, read the plan of the day, do what you're supposed to do. We sort of broke a lot of China, I think, in the standard Navy tradition by just focusing on operation.
How about that? So I guess it makes sense, right? Like, so if you're putting your watch build first, then you set the watch, and then you can rotate quarters around the watch instead of rotating the watch around quarters.
Well, it's kind of a concept. I made it pretty far in the Navy before I heard the concept of a battle rhythm, right? Where the 24-hour clock and you just do the same thing. You know, you have the intel brief at this time, and the bombs drop at this time, and the planes fly at this time. And it's on a 24-hour cycle. And for a lot of those things, it doesn't matter where in that cycle it happens, as long as it happens once a day. You know, the other big challenge was for meal times. Suppo held up an instruction, not to offend any Suppos on the call, but he said, hey, there's this instruction that says this is when meal times are. To which I went, okay. Here's what meal times are on San Jacinto, right? And so we opened up the chow line at midnight, and we had breakfast from like 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. We had lunch from like 11. Put the CSs, or there were MSs at the time, in shift work. And so, everybody on the ship was sort of involved. Now, it wasn't perfect. There were those that hated it, right? I had a couple of folks. If you couldn't delegate, if you were unwilling to delegate and not be at the brief and have your surrogate do it, you were very unhappy with this watch bill, because I didn't want ops there. I wanted sicko there,